Bruchim Habayim, welcome. I am Rabbi Shoshana Conover, and along with the other Temple Sholom clergy, Cantor Shira Ben David, Rabbi Scott Gelman, and Rabbi Rena Singer, we are honored to welcome you to the sanctuary of Temple Sholom of Chicago for the inaugural production of We Are Here, music from the Holocaust, written in the ghettos and concentration camps of occupied Europe and the former Soviet Union. 14 songbooks survived the Shoah, and tonight, thanks to Ira Intellis, David Mendelson, Jeremy Perlin, and all our partners, Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, Shirit Hapleta of Metropolitan Chicago, Jewish United Fund, Jewish Federation of Chicago, CJE, Senior Life Holocaust Community Services, and some truly extraordinary musicians. We will hear songs from each of these 14 songbooks. And a heartfelt thank you goes out for the tireless energy of the organizers from these partner organizations, Kelly Zaney, Renee Bernberg-Silberman, Maya Gomirov, Yonit Hoffman, and Jake Chernoff. I would also like to recognize Consul General Yinam Cohen, Consulate General of Israel to the Midwest, Consul General Wolfgang Mossinger, Consul General of the Federal Republic of Germany to Chicago, Consul General Thomas Botsios, Consulate General of Italy to Chicago, Andrea van der Grinten, Senior Economic Policy Officer of the Netherlands Consulate General in Chicago, Senator Sarah Feigenholtz, our beloved state senator, and State Representative Jennifer Gong Gershowitz. Now tonight, many of the survivors who are with us are from the former Soviet Union. And as terror once again reigns in that region, even as citizens heroically resist, this night is especially poignant and heartbreaking. And as our gaze turns toward Ukraine, our eyes can't help but land on the site of Babi Yar, 80 years after the Holocaust by bullets. On the site of that blood-soaked soil sprawls the story of our people through monuments and, most powerfully, a synagogue. Now, when closed, the synagogue stands as a large wooden monolith atop a giant stage. But it opens like a pop-up book, revealing beauty and sorrow, intricate wooden carvings, walls adorned with a prayer to turn nightmares into a good dream, and a roof painted with colorful flowers in the star constellation of the two nights in September of 1941, when 34,000 Jews were massacred on that spot. Tonight, as one Jewish family, our hearts will open to the beauty, and they will break with the sorrow contained in these songs, written with blood and not with lead, passed from mouth to mouth. These songs are not poetry, they are a piece of the soul. We vow never forget as we listen to these songs described as modest markers on the graves of our brothers and sisters. And we vow never again, not to us, and not to anyone. We stand with the people of Ukraine and call upon governments around the world to do more to stop these atrocities. We remember Boris Romanchenko, a 96-year-old Holocaust survivor killed by a Russian strike on Kharkiv, and Vanda Semyonovna Obietkova, a 91-year-old survivor who died last week while sheltering from Russian strikes in the besieged city, the Ukrainian port of Mariupol. And a synagogue is a fitting place to debut We Are Here, Hinenu, we are here. Our very presence, our existence, is an act of resistance. Tonight, we lift the voices of composers from the Holocaust, many who perished at the hands of the Nazis and their collaborators, but whose music continues to call us to bear witness. On this, close to Erev Yom HaShoah, when the world Jewish community remembers the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, we proclaim Hinenu, we are here. We are listening. And we begin this evening with our memorial candle lighting, led by Holocaust survivors and their descendants. So it is now my honor to call to the podium Renee Bernberg-Silberman, Board Secretary of Shurit HaPleta of Metropolitan Chicago, who will serve as narrator.
Today, our community, in lighting these candles, observes our sacred obligation to remember the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Shoah. We wish to reclaim the legacy of those victims, those whose names we knew and those whose names are forever lost. I ask you to bear with me as our first candlelighter hasn't gotten here yet, and we really wanted to give her the honor of lighting what is considered the first candle. So I am going to skip to the second candle and come back to the reading for the first candle when she arrives. I'm calling up Boris Davidson. Boris, from Mogilev-Podilsky, Ukraine, was less than 3 years old in 1941. He barely remembers his father, but for 2 short letters left behind to Boris and his sister Riza, when Boris's father left to fight the Nazis and was killed in Hungary in 1944. Boris knows and remembers well many tragic events related to the Holocaust, and Boris's family's deportation to the Mogilev-Podilsky ghetto, where the Davidsons were ordered to live until liberation in March 1944. 11 members of Boris's close family were killed in the ghetto, mass shootings, and on the front line. Boris lights, in memory of all of the victims of the Shoah who were murdered in the more than 1,000 ghettos in Nazi-occupied Eastern Europe and Soviet Union, and all of the other towns and villages. We're going to rewind. Our first candle is lit by longtime Shurit HaPleta volunteer and member of Illinois Holocaust Museum's Board of Directors and Speakers Bureau, Ida Pollock-Kurtz. Ida Pollock was born May 1939 in Sosnowiec, Poland. Soon after the German invasion, Ida, her mother, her twin brother, and her older sister were put into the Sosnowiec ghetto. When Ida was 3 years old, her mother committed suicide while her father was fighting as a Polish soldier against the Germans. Like some other Jewish children in Poland, Ida was sheltered by a Catholic family. After the war, Ida's father found her, and she stayed with him until 1957 in Wrocław, Poland, where she attended a Jewish school. Ida then left Poland with her father as they went to live on a kibbutz in Israel. Ida worked and studied Hebrew, met her husband, was married, and had a daughter, Esther. Ida and her family came to Chicago in 1963. Ida lights in memory of the 6 million Jews who died from starvation and torture and who were murdered in the ghettos, forests, ravines, labor, concentration, and transit camps, killing centers, and on death marches all over Nazi-occupied Europe and the Soviet Union. Our third candle is lit by longtime Illinois Holocaust Museum Speakers Bureau volunteer Ben Goldwater. Ben was born in December 1938 in Brussels, Belgium. He was living close to the French border in 1939 when the war broke out. After the Nazis occupied his town, Ben's father joined the Belgian underground against the Nazi war effort. Ben's family lived under constant fear of denunciation as Jews. They fled their home twice as they escaped the local Gestapo. Ben's parents soon decided that they needed to protect him and his sister, and through his father's underground contacts were able to secure a hiding place with a local family who they paid. Ben, age 3, and his sister remained with the family for 14 months and were treated terribly. The family often stole their food rations and at one point decided to turn them into the Gestapo. Realizing the poor conditions their children lived under, Ben's parents took him and his sister and left for another town in Belgium where they would live under false identities until the end of the war. Ben lights in memory of all of the victims of the Shoah who were murdered in the killing centers of Auschwitz-Birkenau, Majdanek, Treblinka, Chelmno, Belzec, and Sobibor, and the victims of the concentration, labor, and transit camps throughout Nazi-occupied Europe and the Soviet Union. Our fourth candle is lit by Holocaust Community Services and Illinois Holocaust Museum volunteer and speaker, Lynn Novitsky. Gadalina Lynn was born in Kiev, Ukraine. Operation Barbarossa began just after her 3rd birthday, and her father left to fight with the Red Army. Lynn's mother fled with her to the east, eventually to Kazakhstan. Lynn's grandparents, who were too ill to travel, stayed behind in their apartment in Kiev. Lynn's father survived and rejoined the family, and they returned to Kiev. Once there, they learned that neither of her grandparents had survived. Her grandfather died of illness, while her grandmother was taken from her apartment, shot in the street, and buried at Babi Yar. Lynn and her family experienced systematic anti-Semitism in the post-war Soviet Union, which limited their educational and career opportunities. Lynn and her husband came to the U.S. in 1979, settling first in New Jersey before coming to Chicago. Lynn lights in memory of the Jewish victims from the former Soviet Union, Ukraine, Belarus, Hungary, Lithuania, Estonia, Romania, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, France, Latvia, Yugoslavia, Greece, Italy, Denmark, Slovakia, and Czechoslovakia, who were murdered in the Shoah, as well as those killed in massacres in Kiev, Babi Yar, Vilnius, Ponary, and other towns and villages, and the victims of the Celts pogrom after the war ended. Our fifth candle is lit by Lori Haston, Illinois Holocaust Museum docent and speaker volunteer. Lori's grandmother, Ray Kushner, was born on February 27, 1923, in Novogródek, Poland, which is 50 miles west of Minsk. After the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was signed on August 23, 1939, Ray and her family were under Soviet control until Germany invaded the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941. German troops came into Novogródek a week later and quickly established a ghetto there. Jews from all of the smaller towns were forced into the Novogródek ghetto, causing terrible overcrowding. 4 different times the Einsatzgruppen entered the ghetto, took Jews into the nearby forest, and murdered them. Over 10,000 Jews were killed in this way. By July 1943, there were only 250 Jews left in the ghetto. They heard that the Belsky partisans were living in the nearby forest. In order to reach the forest, this group decided to build a tunnel underneath the ghetto that would lead them into the forest. It took 3 months to build the tunnel, which was 750 feet long and 2 feet wide. On a rainy evening, Lori's grandmother, Ray, great-grandmother, great-aunt, and great-uncle went along with the others into the tunnel and escaped into the woods. Unfortunately, Lori's great-uncle and 70 others were captured and murdered the next day in the town square. However, Lori's grandmother, great-grandfather, and great-aunt all made it into the woods and found the Belsky partisans there. They lived in the forest with the Belskys from October 1943 until they were liberated on July 14, 1944. Lori lights in memory of all those brave soldiers, the partisans, the freedom fighters, and the militia who served with the Allied forces, as well as those brave soldiers who liberated the camps, towns, and villages of Europe and the former Soviet Union, and for the righteous among the nations who risked and even gave their lives to help their fellow human beings. Our sixth candle is lit by Shirit HaPleta Executive Committee member Sherry Rubenstein, Warsaw. Sherry is the daughter of Meyer Rubenstein of Celts, Poland, whose parents and younger brother were arrested by the Gestapo in August 1942, sent to Treblinka, and never heard from again. She is also the daughter of Esther Majtak Rubenstein of Celts, Poland, who was separated from her family and whose grandfather perished in Siberia as her family struggled to survive the war. Meyer served in the Polish cavalry, and after his horse was shot during the Blitzkrieg, he walked back to Celts only to be rounded up and placed in the Celts ghetto. Meyer met Esther, whom he married in the ghetto. Soon after, Esther and Meyer escaped into the woods together, where they were arrested, then separated, and sent to concentration camps. Esther was liberated from Auschwitz in January 1945, Meyer from Bergen-Belsen in April 1945. They were reunited while convalescing in Sweden after the war. Sherry's parents became active in survivor groups as founding members of the Illinois Memorial Foundation, Shirit HaPleta, and longtime supporters of the U.S. and Illinois Holocaust museums. They made it their mission to tell their stories and to ensure that we never forget. Sherry lights in memory of those whose lives, dreams, and hopes were put out before they even lived, for the 1.5 million Jewish children who were murdered. We light these candles to ensure the never-ending memories of the victims who died, whether Jew or Gentile. We light in memory of this lost generation and what they would have brought to the world in every walk of life. May we recall not only the terror of their deaths, but also the splendor of their lives. We also light to honor those who survived the darkest hours of our history. But it is not enough that we remember. We must teach our children and our children's children to never forget.
We remember, we are here. This evening's program now continues with Consul General Yinam Cohen, Consulate General of Israel to the Midwest.
In Nazi-occupied Lithuania, we open with our first song, Frühling, written by Shmerke Kasserjinski and composed by Abraham Brudno in 1943. Frühling was written for Shmerke's wife Barbara, who died in the Vilna ghetto. What you will hear has never been heard before, as we took Kasserjinski's cappella vocal and sent music to it. Kasserjinski was born in Lithuania, living as a Yiddish writer and activist. He devoted his efforts to preserving Jewish cultural treasures, especially collecting salvaged Shoah songs, works he believed carried invaluable testimony of the Jewish wartime experience. Shmerke Kasserjinski and Abraham Brudno crossed paths while both imprisoned in the Vilna ghetto, where Abraham created some of the ghetto's most notable works of music. Before Abraham could witness the publications of his compositions, he was deported and executed in 1943. Frühling is the first composition from the list of 14 songbooks that we will be listening to this evening, titled Folk Songs from the Camps and Ghettos of Occupied Poland. This specific songbook was published in 1945 by Yehuda Einsman, only 1 month after the end of World War II. Einsman compiled songs to honor these Jewish oral histories, songs that had never been printed but were passed mouth to mouth, written with blood and not lead, as a memorial stone laid for the Jews.
Es leuchtet bei Einig der Himmel, der Bläue, und der vergibt der Punkt. Ihr steht die Abette bei jedem Feuer, und der Tula Bichelle, oh, Frühling, nimm du mein Feuer, und bring meine Liebe, mein Treue zu mir. An deine Flügel bläue, meine Arme und bringe zu mein Lieb. Wie auf deine Flügelwoje und nimm meine Arme und bringe zu mein Lieb. Der Arbeit, aber und das Liebe und Freude, das Neue Verfahren. Das Tod hat das Helfer, die Blumen, Verlaufe, die Lernen, warum sie euch nah. Verlachen, du liebst es Neue, das Neue, was du liebst es wahr. Und da in dem Schatten noch der Sieg dein Gott, das du mir lieber und stark, nimm du mein Zorn und bring meine Liebe, mein Reiter zurück. Auf deine Flügelwoje und nimm meine Hasen und bringe zu mein Lieb. Auf deine Flügelwoje und nimm meine Hasen und bringe zu mein Lieb. Ayo, der Frieden, der Frieden des Blumen, der Bild und der Freundschaft zu lieben. Ist der Liebe, ist der verlorene Blumen, erfreut ist der Geist zu mir. Die Unhaus vergossen, die Welt meint die Frau, das Wasser, die Erde und Ring. Mein Dreie, meine Liebe, wo bist du verfault? Drehst du erneut mein Sinn, oh, Frühling, nimmst du mein Freude und bring meine Liebe, mein Dreite zurück. Und deine Flügelwoje und nimm meine Hand und bring es zu mein Lieb. Und deine Flügelwoje und nimm meine Hand und bring es zu mein Lieb.
Still in Nazi-occupied Lithuania, this song is from the second songbook, Sammlung von Kassett Ghetto Lieder, compiled by Zemi Feder only a year after the war. Feder says, the following songs and poems are the only relics from the concentration camps and the ghettos that can possibly live. We sang because we hoped, and we still hope that a kinder fate will lead us to a happier land where we can sing these songs as a memory and a warning. Kasriel Broido, who wrote this song, was born in 1907 in Lithuania, immersed in Vilna's rich Jewish culture, graduating from Hebrew schooling and performing in Yiddish theater. His artistic prowess quickly established his reputation in Europe as a prolific writer of theatrical scripts and lyrical compositions. While in the Vilna ghetto, he wrote of misery, of inspiration, and of faith for the Jewish future. His songs became daily work songs and unofficial hymns of the ghettos. Today, they are Jewish and historical classics. Even when forced into the camps, his efforts to create never ceased, and his artistic spirit never wavered. In January of 1945, Kasriel was one of the thousands sent on a death march across Eastern Europe. Although only 38 at his death, Kasriel lived with tremendous intention and tremendous impact. The creations of his lifetime remain not only a legacy of his own, but a legacy of the Jewish people.
The same old streets, the same old streetcars, numbers 11 and 4. The same young boys who try to meet cars, buy a newspaper they implore. The self-same sky, but something's not right. The man beneath the sky, uncommon blending to the sunlight. I hear a voice within me cry, and must it be this way? And must it be this way? Fate gives one man great happiness, and yet another lives in distress. Who was it did that say the world should be this way? I ask, it eats my heart out. Must it be this way? Yes, be this way. For them the boulevards and squares, while I live in a slum. Why should I suffer mocking stares? I weep hot tears till I grow numb. Why this inscription on the wall? You cannot go past here. Why do they take my home, my all? At night I lay me down in fear. And must it be this way? And must it be this way? Fate gives one man great happiness, while yet another lives in distress. Who was it did that say the world should be this way? I ask, it eats my heart out. Must it be this way? Yes, be this way. I ask, it eats my heart out. Must it be this way? Yes, be this way.
To introduce our next performance, I invite Ralph Raybach, Holocaust survivor and Vice President of Illinois Holocaust Museum Board of Directors, and for nearly 4 decades, Temple Sholom's Baal Tekiah.
Our third song is titled Minute von Betoken, which means moments of certainty. It's from the songbook Es brennt, which means Our Town Burns, a songbook featuring 15 songs by the famed folk troubadour and people's poet Mordecai Gebertig. It's unique in that it is arranged chronologically and gives us a chilling linear story of a trauma overtaking Gebertig's family and society in the late 30s and early 40s Krakow. Gebertig served in the Austrian-Hungary army for 5 years, including World War I, coming into contact with many different musical folk traditions from around the empire. Gebertig belonged to the Jewish Social Democratic Party and in Krakow's community of left-wing Jewish artists and intellectuals. Gebertig wrote poetry and songs. Despite lack of formal musical training, our troubadour was able to connect so strongly with the hardships and street life of Krakow that during the war, the underground Jewish resistance embraced his song Es brennt as its anthem. In June 1942, Gebertig, aged 65, was shot and killed by German soldiers when he refused to comply with a deportation order. Here is Minute von Betoken, Moments of Certainty.
Yiddish. It was my parents' first language. They were born in Poland, but I never heard them speak Polish. My father, he had a very big family. He had 5 brothers and sisters. He also had a wife and 2 children. They were my brother and sister. They were all taken to Auschwitz. My mother had many relatives. Her beautiful mother, her strong father, her brother, her beautiful sister. She was sent to a labor camp, my mother. She never knew what happened to her family. My sister, my brother, and I, we were never taught Yiddish because my parents wanted us to be Americans. They never spoke much about what happened to them because it was too difficult. But we knew their pain. We knew the loss. We also knew the incredible strength and courage that it took to survive and to begin again, just as this song tells us. Yidden, you should be happy, for it won't be long. Soon the war will finish and they will change their song. Happy, don't you worry, no matter where you dwell. Live with hope and patience, for they can go to hell. Yes, they can go to hell. Die, 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 die. sein, was hat uns noch beinan? Wo ihr tanzt, Taljani, schreit nicht lang, ich hab. Geben einmal nach Hause, es wart auf Eisensof, es wart auf Eisensof. Hoi, dai, 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 dai. Schwärze Arbeit und kleiner Mund machen nie. Kennen, so mein Herren, soll's mal ihr Welt sein. Jesus ist das Gern, es wird du nicht werden rein, es wird du nicht werden rein. So sein Waschen, kein säuter Fleck. Helles Blut von Hassen durchwascht sich nicht weg. Treiben Sohn von Dreris, schneit uns ab der Welt. Jeden soll sein freilich, wir haben seinen Dreht, wir haben seinen Dreht. Oh, ei, ei,
Rayback. It is an honor to call you forward now, third generation and founding chair of Illinois Holocaust Museum's Young Professional Committee, to introduce our next pieces of music.
Our next two songs will be performed as a duet. The song in the first part of the duet is called A Yiddish Kind. It comes from the fourth songbook, Fun Bialystoker Ghetto, published in 1947 by the Bialystok Committee. Quoting committee member Rivke Noecki, this songbook is our modest marker on the graves of our brothers. The word, the song that they, our martyrs, created during days of sorrow and deprivation, sung in sadness and in horror, can also be a marker, an eternal monument. The songs are not poetry. They are a piece of a soul, a cry, a shudder, a moan. The words to this song are by Hannah Heighton with music by Hanek Kohn. This song was written in the Šiauliai ghetto after the massacres of children in the ghettos and camps of Lithuania. The poet describes the fate of the many children who were hidden and raised by non-Jews who risked their lives to save others until the end of the war. The young children were encouraged to forget their Jewish names and their past lives, erasing their identities in order to survive. Hanek Kohn composed music for 40 theater productions and often performed his own work. After World War II, Hanek Kohn worked with the Yiddish Art Theater in Paris, then moved to America. The lyricist Hannah Heighton was born in 1925 in Chevel, Lithuania. She survived several concentration camps and made Aliyah to Israel. Her songs were sung throughout the ghettos. The second song from our duet is called Rivkele di Shabbos Dike and was written by Pesach Kaplan. It too is from the songbook Fun Bialystoker Ghetto. This song translates to the Sabbath widow and reflects on a horrific incident in Bialystok during the first 2 weeks of the German occupation, when 4,000 Jews were murdered in an open field. The women whose husbands were murdered became known as the Shabbos widows. Many of the women heard news of their husband's demise, but did not believe it. This song reflects the pain and hope of the wives and children left behind. Pesach Kaplan was a composer, a teacher, a journalist, a writer, and more. When the Bialystok ghetto was created, he became the head of the education department. Kaplan believed education and cultural activities were essential, serving both as a sign of resistance amidst oppression and preserving the future of Jewish tradition.
In a Lithuanian town stands a house off to one side. Through a window not too large, children look out far and wide. Little boys with agile heads, little girls with golden braids, and together there with them, two dark eyes look so afraid. He has dark eyes full of charm, with a small little nose, and lips only for kissing, wearing his only clothes. It's his mother who brought him here, wrapped up in the night, kissed him fiercely and bewailed. She held him oh so tight. Rivka, the Sabbath one, in a factory toils, weaves a strand into a strand, weaves a braided coil. Oh, the gloomy ghetto stands there much too long, and her heart with so much pain, rueful and forlorn. Her devoted Hershela, he has gone away since that fateful Saturday, since that time, that day, since in morning Rivka mourns the day and night, turns the wheel of her machine, thinking of her plight. Where is he, my place? Does he still live where? In the concentration camp, is he slaving there? Oh, how dreadful is his day! How horrible is mine! Since that fateful Jewish word, you're no longer that day.
And our next pieces of music will be introduced by Representative Jennifer Gong Gershowitz, Illinois House of Representatives for the 17th District.
The final song from the fourth songbook is called Marsh Kovshitsne. It describes the horrific treatment of Jews with lyrics like, "Prison is my only home," or "A dog's life without meaning." Based on a popular tune titled Gassen Singe, composed by Pesach Bernstein with rewritten lyrics by H. Goldstein. Bernstein was born in Poland and ran away to join a Jewish theater and was later arrested as a spy. Sadly, his parents were murdered in a robbery in Minsk. However, in 1923, he was brought to the United States and had a career as a recording artist and actor.
Markov Schnitzner das Wegs it gut for face mir nacket this I kill mein Verfluch der schreit mein with mir das Herz wird mit weh kann bleiben hat kann bleiben gestehen thing. I've been placing my hook before the mission get going, but cooks are going for a year later. Still, my conscience day. I try to speak. I come from Markowitz 12 hours away. Now I work barefoot and cold 12 hours a day. I stand here breaking my back while they curse me out, remaining alone, driven so far from home. I cry as they shout, work harder but make it faster too. Your paycheck of nothing will show you well to do. So slog like a dog and stand up for dignity. A bad day to be in my Koshet's knee. Prison, we're all the same. We must fight to survive. So we became family, keep our brothers alive. But when your brother needs food, and so do you, where is your conscience when you're near unconscious from lack of food? Harder, but make it faster too. Your paycheck of nothing will show you well to do. So slog like a dog and stand up with dignity. A bad day to be in my Koshitzani.
From Lithuania, we head north to the camps of occupied Latvia by introducing our next song, Mein Zavue, also known as My Testament. This song was written by Jacob Rabinowitz, composed by Joanna Spector. This song can be found in a fifth songbook titled Ghetto und Lieder aus Lettland und Litauen. Rabinowitz was born in Libau, Latvia. During the Holocaust, he was imprisoned in the Libau ghetto, eventually landing at the Priku concentration camp, where in 1944 he wrote, I want to live to the day to see my brothers and sisters stop suffering. I know this day will come, not now, but soon. Sadly, Jacob was unable to see the day his brothers and sisters no longer suffered. He was executed on May 3rd, 1945, in Neustadt, Germany. Only 2 hours later, the British Army arrived to liberate his comrades. Joanna Spector, composer, was also from Libau, Latvia, and connected to Jacob. Upon her liberation from the camps, she immigrated to the United States, where she fully devoted her studies, work, and the rest of her life to the study and conservation of Jewish music. She was a graduate of the Hebrew Union College and Columbia University, director of ethnomusicology at the Seminary College of Jewish Music, and more. She amassed a collection of 10,000 religious and folk recordings. Tonight, 78 years later, Jacob's will to live is transmitted through song to all of us here. As he writes, "Let my testament be the echoing songs I leave for my tormented brothers and sisters."
Mein Zau, I want to live. I don't want to die. I don't want to wear shattered glass over my eyes anymore. I want to live to see the day my brothers and sisters stop suffering this way. I know this day will come. Not now, but soon. And for now, I will put my hope and my will into this song for eternity. I want to survive. I don't want to die. And I won't wear shattered glass over my eyes. I want to see clearly and live to see the day when my brothers and sisters stop suffering this way. I know it will come, not right now, but soon. Till then, all I have is my hope and this tune. For the rest of my days in every endeavor, I will put my hope in this song
We will now have the opportunity to hear from Bill Curtis, renowned American television journalist, producer, and anchor.
Our next song is called Maktu Digegala, or Close Your Little Eyes, from the 6th songbook with lyrics by Isaiah Spiegel and music by David Bigelman. The songbook under Unser Gesang was published by Kiesuczynski, acknowledging the need to include a repertoire of songs, quote, dripping with the blood of wounds not yet healed. Close Your Little Eyes is a dark lullaby from mother to child, written for the Ghetto Theater. Its lyrics turn the expectation of a lullaby upside down when we hear the family's home is burned to the ground. The father never comes home, and the wind and hail accompany the child to the ends of the earth. David Bigelman was an active participant in the cultural life of the Lodz ghetto, writing orchestra works and songs describing life there, much of which was censored. Deported to Auschwitz in 1944, he died of exhaustion in February 1945. For 5 years, Isaiah Spiegel lived in the Lodz ghetto writing short stories depicting Jewish life and hid the manuscripts before multiple camp deportations. He returned to Lodz after the liberation in 1945 to dig up the manuscripts that he had buried, in using his creative powers to transform the suffering and death of his people into tales that preserve their memories. Spiegel affirms the humanity the Nazis and their collaborators were so intent on destroying. Here is Maktu Digegala.
Your little eyes, soon little birds will fly in circles everywhere. They flutter by your bed, your head upon your hand, the house in ash and sand. We leave my darling child in search of life. God's from the world withdrawn. The black night feels each dawn. She waits for us with horror and with dread. We both are standing here with terror always near, not knowing where our road has led. Stripped naked we were thrown, chased from our loving home in darkest night, into the open field, in wind and hail and storm. fearsome currents born forth into the depths of the earth.
Our next readings will be introduced by Dr. Yonit Hoffman, second generation and senior director of Holocaust Community Services. She'll introduce these next musical pieces.
Once again, in occupied Lithuania, we arrive at Ziskivain Azumertog. It was a summer's day, with lyrics by Rikala Glazer and music by Herman Yablokov. It comes from the songbook Das Gesang vom Wilner Ghetto, or The Song of Vilna Ghetto, put together by Kaczynski in 1947. Born in 1924, Rikala Glazer was only 16 years old when Nazis imprisoned her in the Vilna Ghetto in 1941. When thousands from Vilna and the surrounding towns were shot and buried in mass graves in Ponari on September 6, 1941, she wrote Ziskivain Azumertog about the beauty of a summer's day in the midst of profound loss. Shortly after, Glazer was deported to a camp. She managed to escape from the train, and of the 60,000 Jews of Vilna who were alive in 1939, she was one of only 3,000 survivors to live to liberation. Herman Yablokov, the composer, was born into a poor family in Grodno, then a predominantly Polish town in the Russian Empire, now within Belarus. In 1920, he left home to join a Yiddish theater group that traveled around Lithuania, Poland, and Germany. Yablokov toured widely, giving more than 100 performances for 180,000 homeless Jewish refugees. In one camp, he found his niece, the only survivor of his family after the Holocaust. He received the U.S. Army Certificate of Merit for his work and served as president of the Yiddish Theatrical Alliance and the chairman of the Yiddish National Theater in New York. He died in Mount Sinai, New York City in 1981 at age 77. Here is Ziskivain Azumertog.
It was a lovely summer day, just like the one before. The sun, the breeze, the grass, the trees, no clouds in sight, we swore. Over cheerful sounds of birdsong I had heard but thought I was wrong. We were ordered to the ghetto, but what for? The road stretched far and hurt our feet. No end in sight was near. I think that looking at us, even stones would shed a tear. As they marched us like in battle, we were sacrificed like cattle. Our blood was in the town that once was there. And on the day our line was fully crossed, we understood that everything was lost. Of no use was a pleading for a savor from our bleeding. They took us one by one from door to door. Now in a cage, we're tortured and forsaken, deceived by very lives that they have taken. Some will Without father, without mother, rarely we have each other. They've achieved their final goal, it's clear. Seinen alle mir parparte farben till nart Parpangde te bun leben ungenarte eulenart Wir tonataten non am Mamen selten werden es ist zusammen Der Säune hat gedreht sein größtes Ziel Bei Paris in mein und Kiewegen Bei Sachen Hitlen gegen Fest vor Regen Dun Sachen vor Cardones von die Kehle kenne Schommes die Erd wird sehr auf ewig zugeschickt.
Our next song is from the 8th songbook of the same name, Sag nicht keinmal, as du gehst dem letzten Weg, which means never say that you have reached the final road, by Hirsch Glick. This songbook was published in Warsaw as a song collection for youth on the 4th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Glick took an existing melody by Russian composer Dmitry Pokras and wrote the words to Sag nicht keinmal, for short, as a form of protest in the Vilna ghetto upon hearing of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in April 1943. Brimming with hope, pain, and contradiction, this song is still known today as the Hymn of the Partisans, a battle song for peace. Though Glick grew up in poverty in Vilna, he was raised in a warm 5-sibling household of Jewish tradition, piety, and worldliness. Forced to leave school at age 16 to make a living for his family, Glick worked in a paper mill and continued writing poetry. The next year, he assembled a young writers group of people to share their work and eventually published the journal Jungwald. When Vilna was taken by the Nazis in 1941, he and his father were taken to work under difficult conditions, and Glick became ill, though he continued to write and even to win competitions for his poetry. In 1943, Glick was deported to the Vilna ghetto and eventually a labor camp in Nazi-occupied Estonia, after which he was presumed to have lost his life during an escape attempt. We sing this in memory of Hirsch Glick.
Sag nicht einmal, als du gehst den letzten Weg, Hots himlen blajene verstelle blåje tøk, men väntar uns gebänkte sjå, svetta pojken unser trotten seinen då, men vänt noch unser eus gebänkte sjå, svetta pojken unser trotten seinen då. Von grünen Palmenland, weißen Land von Schnee. Wir kommen mit unser Pein, mit unser Wein. Und wie allen Silser spritzt von unser Blut. Sprotzen wird durch unser Blut, unser Blut. Und gefallen Silser spritzt von unser Blut. Spross wie dort in unser Gure, unser Mut. Never say that you have reached the very end. Through laden skies a bit of future may portend. For the hour for which we yearn will yet arrive, and the marching steps with thunder we survive. For the hour for which we yearn will yet arrive, and the marching steps will thunder we survive. From land of palm trees to the land of distant snow, we are here with our pain and with our woe. And when every hour blood will shed in pain, our fighting spirits will resurrect again. And wherever blood will shed in pain, our fighting spirits will resurrect again.
To introduce our next compositions, we invite Bruce Taylor, JCRC Vice Chair and JUF Board Member.
Our next song transports us again to the Kovno ghetto in Nazi-occupied Lithuania, where Saul Shanker composed and wrote Nit Ayer Mazel, or It's Not Your Fate. The song opens with the arrival of weary Jews to the ghetto, where they must come to terms with their robbed freedom and their stolen well-being and their dark futures. In the chorus you'll hear, it's not in the stars for you to be free. Hard labor alone, friends, is your destiny. In 1912, Saul was born in Plungin, Lithuania. Although not much is known about his life, it is known he survived both the Kovno ghetto in Lithuania and Dachau concentration camp in Germany, writing and composing throughout. At the end of the war, he shared his musical talents across post-war displaced persons camps, leading religious services as a cantor. In 1979, Saul passed away at 67 years old and was laid to rest in Israel. Saul's composition is found in the 9th songbook, von der Jiddischer Kovna. This songbook was compiled in Munich in 1948 by Joseph Gar. As a survivor of both the Kovno and Riga ghettos, Joseph was a historian of ghetto culture, compiling and curating folklore songs while providing his personal commentary of these vast cultural achievements taking place in the midst of and despite the Holocaust. Without further ado, Nit Ayer Mazel.
Oh,
For our selection from the 10th songbook, we will perform 2 lullabies back to back. We begin with Her Mein Kind, and over time the song would be rewritten over and over, but this was written by a 9-year-old girl named Elzunia. Author Ava Hoffman recognized this 4-verse line as the most piercing single verse I've ever heard. This comes from our 10th songbook titled Von Letzten Kurban, or From the Last Extermination, compiled by Israel Kaplan in his work to publicize Nazi crimes. He obsessed in collecting artifacts from displaced persons camps, realizing in his own words the only treasure survivors possessed was their memory. From Elzunia, we go to Vegela. Vegela is written by Ilse Weber, a Czech author, playwright, and musician. When the Nazis occupied Czechoslovakia in 1939, the Webers were able to get their eldest son, Hanush, to safety in Sweden through kinder transport. Unfortunately, Ilse, her husband, and their youngest son, Tommy, were sent to a concentration camp in February 1942. There, Ilse worked in the camp's children's hospital at night, doing all she could for the patients without the help of medicine, which was forbidden for Jewish patients and prisoners. She wrote many poems there and set a good number of them to music, accompanying herself on guitar while she sang to children and the elderly of the ghetto. 2 years later, her husband was deported to Auschwitz, and she and Tommy went with him so as not to break up their family. On October 6, 1944, when children in Ilse's care were ordered to the gas chambers, she voluntarily decided to accompany them so that she could provide comfort in their last moments. It is said that she sang this lullaby, Vegela, to her son and many other children as they entered the chambers. In the following translation, you'll hear Ilse Weber's soothing words in a lullaby, assuring the children that the sounds they hear are just the wind singing, the light they see is just the moon's eye twinkling, and the world is peaceful and silent. The names in the song have been replaced with her children's, Tommy, who died that day, and Hanush, who is still alive in Sweden, as an author with books dedicated to spreading his mother's songs and legacy. Ilse Weber wrote a letter to a friend in 1939, a month before sending Hanush to London. I have never been ashamed of the fact that I am a Jew, but now, when we are being hunted down like animals, when we are robbed of our homeland, where we lived decently and honorably for centuries, where the biggest and most powerful countries indeed regret our fate with indignant words, but otherwise secure their gates against undesirable elements. Today, I am carrying my Jewishness as an honor.
Don't you cry, close your eyes, Tommy. The wind sings with your mommy. It plays so sweetly through the trees. The nightingale sings with the breeze. Close your eyes, don't you cry, Tommy. The wind sings with your Don't you cry, close your eyes, heaven. The moon, she shines from heaven. A lantern in her tent up high, a twinkle in her tired eye. Don't you cry, close your eyes, heaven. The moon, she shines from heaven. Don't you cry, close your eyes, honest. The world is silent upon us. No sound disturbs your peace and rest. My baby huddled in your nest. Don't you cry, close your eyes, honest. The world is silent upon us.
To introduce Ani Ma'amin, we invite Senator Sarah Feigenholtz, Illinois Senator for the 6th District, our senator.
Our next song is Ani Ma'amin, I Believe, composed by Azrael David Fastag, with the words from the 12th Article of Faith by Maimonides. It is from the 11th songbook, Songs of the Concentration Camps. Azrael David Fastag was a Modzitzer Chassid, a chazan and a composer of Hasidic tunes. In 1942, on a train to Treblinka, he wrote the melody for Ani Ma'amin. The words of the song are based on the 12th Maimonides Credo, which says, I believe with perfect faith in the coming of Mashiach, the Messiah. And even though he may delay, I wait each day for him to arrive. Fastag sang this on the train to himself every day. In anticipation of his demise, he asked that someone deliver the song to his mentor in New York, the Modzitzer Rebbe. On that train, 2 boys jumped off. One died instantly. The other made it to New York and made sure he delivered to the rabbi news about the song. The rabbi told his congregation of the Jews singing Ani Ma'amin on their way to the gas chamber. Elie Wiesel tells a story of Ani Ma'amin. After one particularly brutal forced march and work detail, everyone was in total despair. A few Russian Jews had discovered rat poison. They lined up to take the poison and end their pain and suffering. There was one man who separated himself from the group while this was going on. He began to sing and hum Ani Ma'amin. These folks were shaken to their cores, these Jews, one by one. Elie Wiesel among them joined in singing Ani Ma'amin. If they lived like Wiesel did, they lived to bear witness and to establish new lives and new families. However, if they perished, they did so with honor and with dignity.
Ani
We will now have the opportunity to hear from Robert Bob Surratt, American broadcaster and morning host at WGN AM in Chicago.
Returning to occupied Lithuania, we once again arrive at the Vilna ghetto, to writer Leah Rudnicki. Dremlin Fagel is dedicated to a child rescued by Leah. It's the story of thousands of children suffering the greatest losses of their young lives. Leah was born in Lithuania in 1916. Through the years, her poetic prowess earned her rave reviews, publications in Jewish literary magazines, and literary prizes. Surviving Russian occupation and the German invasion, her later written work heavily depicted devastating circumstances of the lives of the Jews in Lithuania. While in the Vilna ghetto, she continued her poetry as well as producing her own song collections. Leah was a true freedom fighter. Beyond her writing, she was a member of the resistance in Vilna, eventually forced to give her life once she was eventually arrested by the Gestapo and sent to Treblinka. Leah was only 27 years old, but had lived lifetimes. Dremlin Fagel is in a 12th songbook titled In Distress, Songs of the Ghettos, published in 1949 by Ernst Hurwitz. Dremlin Fagel translates to Dreaming Birds, a lullaby that, although written by Leah, is set to the pre-existing music of Lev Yampolsky. Lev was a Russian Jewish composer and pianist with a Jewish musical repertoire spanning hundreds of performances in Jewish theaters across Russia and Europe. The survival of Dremlin Fagel attests to the spirits of those like Leah, devoting her home to a child, her life to her people, and her written words permanently to the historical record. Introducing Dremlin Fagel, which will be done as an instrumental.
I now call forward Dr. Danny M. Cohn, third-generation author, associate professor of instruction at Northwestern University, and co-chair of Illinois Holocaust and Genocide Commission.
Our next song takes us to Nazi-occupied Poland with Der Hofsänger von Warszawa Ghetto, street singer of the Warsaw Ghetto. Street Singer was written and composed by Reuven Lipschitz, who also published his own songbook, the 13th one of this evening, titled Zu singen und zu sagen. Street Singer tells the story of a young child who lost their entire family in the Holocaust, a story far too familiar for many of the youngest victims and child survivors of Nazi persecution. The foreshadowing of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising in these lyrics indicate that Reuven Lipschitz witnessed the 1943 uprising himself. All throughout the years of Nazi oppression and turmoil, Reuven never stopped writing, composing, and storytelling. Before his death in 1975, not only was Reuven a composer, writer, and musician, but he founded theater venues and published significant original written content, including the next song. His songbook publications are noted not only for the stories they hold, but for the talent they possess, as every one of his publications consisted solely of his own written work. From newspapers to magazines, from poetry to lyrics, from the theater to the stage, Reuven Lipschitz's works are a deeply personal representation of his experiences and his memories. In his own words, as men lebt, der lebt men. When you live, you experience. From the last troubadour of the Warsaw Ghetto himself, introducing Street Singer of the Warsaw Ghetto. Our next song is one of the most enigmatic of this evening. Regretfully, the historical record has left us unable to trace neither the origins of the writer or composer of the following music, nor where it was written. We are only left able to determine with certainty the spotlight of the writer's heartbreak, Mama's Grave. This songbook was written in 1943 and compiled by Moshe Beregovsky. Had it been released, it would have been titled Jiddische Volksschaffung in die Tag von Größer Vaterländischer Milchkammer, translating to Jewish folk creations in the days of the Great Patriotic War. Tragically, this specific songbook was suppressed from final publication by the Soviet Union in 1949. Before being placed on trial and exiled for his valiant efforts, Moshe Beregovsky was already a well-renowned ethnomusicologist and Jewish folklorist. Moshe was a collector, curator, and preservationist of Jewish folklore, as well as of Ukrainian and Bashkirian folklore gathered from his travels. During the Holocaust, he was evacuated to Russia. He continued to collect records and histories from Jewish war refugees until his arrest by the Soviets in 1949. When he wasn't founding institutions, leading departments and cabinets, he accumulated thousands upon thousands of field recordings, writings, and transcriptions. Moshe Beregovsky was a true testament of Jewish perseverance. After his death in 1961, his work gained even greater acknowledgement, and rightfully so. Today, he is considered the foremost ethnomusicologist of Eastern European Jewry, and we honor his memory tonight by playing the actual field recording of Mama's grave, which was recorded in 1945.
I now call to the podium Holocaust survivor Marian Deichmann and her son Philip de Bossu for the legacy and acceptance. Marian was born in Germany in 1932. Along with her parents, Kurt and Alice Deichmann, she moved to Luxembourg in 1934. Soon after arriving in Luxembourg, the family decided to split up. Her father went to Brazil, and Marian and her mother Alice remained in Europe. With the German invasion of Luxembourg in 1940, Alice and Marian fled to Paris. On July 16, 1942, during the Veldiv roundup, Marian's mother was arrested, along with thousands of Parisian Jews, and eventually interned at Drancy and deported to Auschwitz. She did not survive. Through the help of the resistance, Marian was moved to multiple hiding places, eventually being placed with Francois and Angèle Perreny in a village in Normandy, France in 1943. Perrenys were named righteous among the nations on June 23, 2015. Our final song and reading this evening will be presented by Naomi Altman third generation and a senior at Latin School of Chicago, and founder of Messages from the Past, Never Forget.
Our last song is by Martin Rosenberg, a prominent conductor and a revolutionary who strove to infuse Polish and German choral music with his humanistic and socialist beliefs. On a trip to Berlin in September of 1939, he was arrested by the Gestapo and sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp. There, Rosenberg endured long days of grueling labor. So naturally, he recruited a couple dozen inmates and formed a choir. They sang in secret for 3 years. When he found out they were going to be sent to the Auschwitz death camp, Rosenberg wrote a requiem for himself and his fellow prisoners called Jüdischer Todgesang, or Jewish Death Song, that parodied a ubiquitous Jewish folk song called 10 Brüder, or 10 Brothers. The song chronicles these 10 brothers dying in the gas chambers, one by...
I'm going to interrupt you for a moment, and I'm going to invite you to share some words, and then I'll invite you back.
Sorry. Good evening. The piece I am to read is called Legacy. We take this oath, we take it in the shadows of flames whose tongues guard the soul of our people. We vow in the name of dead parents and children, with our sadness hidden, our faith renewed, we shall never let the sacred memory of our perished 6 million be scorned or erased. We saw them, they were hungry and in fear. We saw them rush to battle. We saw them in the loneliness of the night, true to their faith. At the threshold of death, we saw them. We received their silence in silence and merged their tears with ours. Deportation, execution, mass graves, death camps, mute prayers, cries of revolt, desperation, torn scrolls, cities and towns, villages and hamlets, the young, the old, the rich, the poor, ghetto fighters and partisans, scholars and messianic dreamers, ravaged faces, fists raised. Like clouds of fire, all have vanished. We take this oath, visions becomes the word to be handed down from father to son, from mother to daughter, from generation to generation. Remember what the Nazi killers and their accomplices did to our people. Remember them with rage and contempt. Remember what a different world did to us and to itself. Remember the victims with pride and with sorrow. Remember also the deeds of the righteous Gentiles. We shall also remember the miracle of the Jewish rebirth in the land of our ancestors, in the independent state of Israel. Let our legacy endure as a stone of the temple wall. Thank you.
The piece I'm reading tonight is Acceptance. We accept the obligation to this legacy. We are the generations born after the darkness. Through our parents' and grandparents' memories, words, and silence, we are linked to that annihilated Jewish existence whose echoes permeate our consciousness. We dedicate this pledge to you, our parents and grandparents, to all 6 million whose unyielding spiritual and physical resistance, even in the camps and ghettos, exemplifies our people's commitment to life. We pledge to remember. We shall teach our children to preserve forever that uprooted Jewish spirit which could not be destroyed. We shall tell the world of the depths to which humanity can sink and the heights which we attained, even in hell itself.
Thank you so much, Marion and Philip, for showing us both grace and strength. And now, our final song and reading this evening will be presented by Naomi Altman. The only good thing is being able to mention you twice. Third generation, and a senior at Latin School of Chicago, and extraordinarily, founder of Messages from the Past, Never Forget. Naomi.
Okay, take two. Our last song is by Martin Rosenberg, a prominent conductor and a revolutionary who strove to infuse Polish and German choral music with his humanistic and socialist beliefs. On a trip to Berlin in September of 1939, he was arrested by the Gestapo and sent to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. There, Rosenberg endured long days of grueling labor. So naturally, he recruited a couple dozen inmates and formed a choir. They sang in secret for 3 years. When he found out they were going to be sent to the Auschwitz death camp, Rosenberg wrote a requiem for himself and his fellow prisoners called Jüdischer Todgesang, or Jewish Death Song, that parodied a ubiquitous Yiddish folk song called 10 Brüder, or 10 Brothers. The song chronicles these 10 brothers dying in the gas chambers, one by one, verse by verse, and the prisoners sung it until the very end of their lives. Rosenberg's friend, a non-Jewish prisoner named Alexander Kulishevitz, attended many choir rehearsals at Sachsenhausen. In 1943, when the Jews were sent to the gas chambers, Rosenberg made Kulishevitz promise that should he survive, he would sing the requiem so that the world would not forget the suffering in the Jewish death camps. In this version, you'll hear Kulishevitz's real voice singing Jüdischer Todgesang, accompanied by our chorus of singers passing down the story to you, our audience, just as Rosenberg wanted.
Boom, 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 boom. La 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 la. Boom, 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 boom. Tengri dar mit dem Bass, singt mir mal ein Lied, müssen wir ins Glas. Lieder mit der Fiedel, Mäuschen mit dem Bass, singt mir mal ein Lied. Müssen wir ins Gas, ins Gas, ins Gas. Bin ich nur geblieben, mit wem soll ich nun weinen? Die anderen sind ermordet. Denk ja an alle meinen. Ja, Feder, Weiche mit dem Bass, hört mein letztes Lied. Ich muss auch ins Glas. Ja, wieder der Feder, Weiche mit dem Bass, hört mein letztes Lied.
To hear the voice of Alexander Kuleshevitz, along with this beautiful choir, nearly 80 years later, due to a friendship that transcended faith and brutality, is truly a lesson to us still. We conclude this evening's program with memorial prayers, and afterward, we invite you to exit the sanctuary. Time and again in our people's history, we have fallen victim to the capricious tyranny of the cruel, from Pharaoh to Antiochus, from the Crusades to the Khmelnytsky massacres, and we have triumphed. Hinenu, we are here. We who remain pray for those who perished. El Malay Rachamim, God full of compassion, grant perfect rest to the souls of our loved ones under the wings of the Shekhinah. This plea was originally written in the wake of the Khmelnytsky massacres in Ukraine, where 300 communities were destroyed. and as many as 100,000 Jews were murdered. Yet the Holocaust was its own breach. The souls who perished in those ghettos, concentration camps, wooded areas, synagogues, and streets received their own unique version of El Malay. Tonight, we have borne witness not only to the brutality of the Holocaust and the Shoah, but to the triumph of the human spirit. Each song a heroic act of resistance. We have heard from 14 songbooks, each one surviving. And there are more songs to be heard, more stories to witness. Some people here received tea lights with the names of musicians from the 14 songbooks. There are 130 unique names of composers and their songs. So we invite you now to turn on the tea light and lift their light during El Malay and Kaddish. These composers and lyricists never had the chance to have their work heard. So tonight we raise a light and say, we hear you. Your voice has been heard and will continue to be heard.
Please rise. Shochein bamromi Hametze minuchan echona Tachat kanefei hashchina B'malot Kedoshim u'techorim Kizor arakia Maskirim et nishmot kol acheinu b'nei Yisrael anashim nashim v'taf shenidbechu v'shenechneku ושנשרפו ושנהרגו מדעניין אנכי מנוחתם אנא בעל כרחמים אז תרם בסדר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור חיים את נשמותיכם Adonai hu nachalatam v'yanuhu v'shalom al mishkevodehem v'nomar
God, filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens' heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your Shekhinah, amid the ranks of the holy and the pure, illuminating like the brilliance of the skies the souls of our beloved and our blameless, who went to their eternal place of rest. May you, who are the source of mercy, shelter them beneath your wings eternally, and bind their souls among the living, that they may rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Kaddish Yatom.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה. בעלמא דברה חירוצי וימליך מלכוצי. בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בעגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. Please be seated.
We invite forward now Ira Intellis and David Mendelson. They are responsible for helping us to lift these lights, to hear these voices, to honor these legacies, to dedicate ourselves to their future as we assure
we hear you. Your voice has been heard.
and it will continue to be heard. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our musicians. Thank you to our singers. Thank you to our survivors. Thank you to the generations who continue to give them voice. Thank you to all of our representatives here tonight. Thank you.